podcast. Smoke it if you got it. Smoke it if you got it. Ungraded podcast. Ungraded podcast. Ungraded podcast. Ungraded podcast. I'm a barnacle. I'm a barnacle.
What's up, everybody? Hope everybody's having a good day today. I will be your captain today on the magical Barnacle ride daytime stream. So, unfortunately, we don't have custom doing a stream today, so here I am. I was going to be playing Far Cry anyway, and I also wanted to listen to the NPR hearing, the PBS and NPR hearing that went on yesterday. So this may not be a topic that's interesting to a lot of people, but this is definitely something that I'm interested in. PBS has gotten really shit over the years, and obviously it's a brainwashing the kids. The programming is weird. So I'm really curious to hear what this is about. Also, too, the way they report the news. Obviously, they're part of the fake news. So we're going to take a look at this, and I'm also going to be working on my Far Cry New Dawn game, which I barely started. So I'm still trying to figure it out.
This hearing of the Subcommittee on Delivering on Government Efficiency will come to order. Welcome, everyone. Without objection, the chair may declare a recess at any time. I recognize myself for the purpose of making an opening statement. Good morning. At the DOGE Subcommittee, we are continuing our war on waste. That means rooting out spending that is unnecessary, wasteful, and frankly, un-American. Today, we are looking at the more than $500 million federal taxpayers spend annually to fund public radio and television. A big chunk of this subsidy flows to National Public Radio and Public Broadcasting Service. NPR and PBS are the big DC-based entities that create and distribute much of the news and educational content heard and seen on public radio and TV stations across the country.
This is the quickest way to clear out stuck poop.
If you've never felt like a burden because you have frequent stomach issues, then keep scrolling. For all of you that have stomach issues like bloating, constipation, or diarrhea, I have some important news.
When Congress adopted the Public Broadcasting Act of 1967, it did so because it thought at the time that federal dollars were needed to provide objective news and education content to the entire nation, including rural residents who lived off the grid. Fast forward a few decades, and a lot has changed. The invention of the internet, for instance, and social media. It's made news and information widely available.
Look at this freaking tiger.
Areas. Americans are increasingly consuming digital media and podcasts. The audience of public radio and television is declining. And I know this because I represent a rural district where farmers listen to podcasts and internet-based news while they drive their tractors. At the same time, NPR and PBS have increasingly become radical left-wing echo chambers for a narrow audience of mostly wealthy, white, urban liberals and progressives who generally look down on and judge rural America.
Skin
PBS News is not just left-leaning, but it is actively uses taxpayer funds to push some of the most radical left positions, like featuring a drag queen
we gotta
on
destroy
the
this
show
truck.
Let's Learn, a show targeted toward young children ages 3 to 8 years old.
All right,
I want you to know I grew up watching children's programming on PBS. And as a mother who raised 3 children, I felt confident that I could leave the room while my own children were watching children's programming on PBS. But I can tell you right now, Miss.
All right. We get it. They're bad. All right, let's get to some. Here we go.
PBS News posted the clip, called it a fascist Nazi salute, and described how it was similar to the same Heil used by Nazis at their victory rallies. Not once did PBS or NPR report on the numerous accounts of Democrats making the same gesture.
Just like Elon. Just like what Elon
AOC,
did.
Kamala
because
Harris,
they're a bunch
Barack
of hypocrites.
Obama, Elizabeth Warren, somebody that lost a presidential race, Hillary Clinton, Governor Tim Walz. Why wasn't this treated exactly the same way? Is there not a standard in journalism today? Apparently not. Here's How We Lost America's Trust was in fact the title of a powerful essay written last year by Yuri Berliner, a veteran NPR editor. In his essay, Berliner described how NPR's downward spiral accelerated greatly during the first Trump administration. He said NPR dedicated efforts to damage the Trump presidency via relentless pursuit of Russiagate rumors that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia over the election. NPR hosts interviewed Adam Schiff, then the top Democrat of the House Intelligence Committee, 25 times about Trump and Russia. But they made no apologies when the Mueller report found no evidence that the Trump campaign had colluded with Russia, because they did not. Berliner also described NPR's passionate embrace of the left-wing DEI ideology that Americans clearly reject, as evidenced by the November elections. NPR's language and style guides were shaped by race and gender-based affinity groups that dominated the internal culture of the organization. And NPR journalists were to ask everyone they interviewed their race, gender, and ethnicity, and enter it into a centralized tracking system. This tracking system embeds DEI into the fibers of its content. Sounds like racism to me. It's a software attached to NPR's content management system where these reporters and producers submit information about their sources' race and ethnicity, gender identity, geographic location, that's kind of scary, and age range. The tool allows NPR to track the demographics of their sources in real time to allow for source diversity. The irony of these supposed diverse sources is that NPR has no real interest in diversity, like having diverse viewpoints. Berliner tried to sound the alarm on this when he checked voter registration records of the editors at DC's NPR headquarters and found 87 registered Democrats and 0 registered Republicans. But NPR treated Berliner like a political dissident in the old Soviet Union. He was driven out of the organization and forced to resign. Sounds like communism. And the ringleader of that effort was NPR's then newly appointed CEO, Catherine Marr, who is before us today. She dismissed Mr. Berliner's wake-up call as profoundly disrespectful, hurtful, and demeaning.
For anyone struggling with ear ringing, do not drink water. You may not know this, but the biological reason why some people struggle.
In other words, instead of viewing it
Talk
as
about
a
the
chance
drag
to finally
queen.
right the ship at NPR, Emily Randall from Washington be waved on to
targets, weapons intelligence, and
Hold
security.
on. I wanted to
answering
explain
our
the drag
questions
queen
in full
poster
public
that we're
view
looking
and
at.
explaining
This
to
is
the
actually
American people
I know what this is. This is actually somebody that does, like, they've got this drag queen that does this like children's storybook hour or something. I think on PBS. I'm not sure. I read a story about this. It looks familiar. So I was kind of hoping that she would talk about that.
why they think they deserve Americans' hard-earned taxpayer money. I request unanimous consent that Representative Jim Jordan from Ohio, Representative Ro Khanna from California, Representative Emily Randall from Washington be waived on to today's hearing for the purpose of asking questions. Without objection, so ordered. And with that, I yield to Ranking Member Lynch for his opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the witnesses for your willingness to.
Oh, we don't want to
program.
hear you.
This hearing also comes at the direction of President Trump and Elon Musk, who have repeatedly called for the defunding of all public media and claimed that media organizations such as PBS and NPR are, and I quote, a liberal disinformation machine, close quote.
He's not
Meanwhile,
wrong.
the Trump administration is engaged in an actual disinformation campaign to minimize the catastrophic national security breach that was revealed earlier this week.
Oh, come on
As
now.
reported by Atlantic editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg,
That was a big
Mr.
nothing
Goldberg
burger.
was inadvertently added to a group chat on an unauthorized, non-secure, publicly available message app in which Secretary of Defense
Why
Pete
are you
Hegseth
bringing that
disclosed,
up in a
quote,
hearing about
operational
in the
details of
NPR and
forthcoming strikes on Yemen,
the damn PBS?
including
What the fuck
information
does that
about
have to do with
targets,
anything?
weapon systems, and
What a fucking
other
weirdo.
actions the U.S. would be taking, and also attack sequencing.
What a fucking weirdo.
I want to remind my colleagues in Congress that federal law makes it a crime when a person, through gross negligence, removes information relating to national defense from its proper place of custody or delivered to anyone in violation of this trust, ought to be lost, stolen, or abstracted or destroyed. And what's more, if evidence shows that any of the parties who were in on that signal chat lied under the under oath
the thing is
in the Senate
that
yesterday,
as far as
Mr.
like
Ratcliffe
the
or
fucking leaking
Mr.
on the
Ratcliffe or Ms.
apps,
Gabbard, for
like
instance, then
I feel like some of that was
conspiracy to
intentional to
conceal that
find
breach
out
would be
like
far
who was
more
spilling
worse,
shit.
far worse, where center or criminal intent is in evidence and would be more likely to invite culpability and possible.
And I don't even
criminal
want to hear about
liability.
that shit after fucking
The
Hillary
Secretary
and
of Defense
fucking
would be subject to
Biden, all
criminal
the fucking
prosecution,
shit they do with
and it would be the
intel.
responsibility of the U.S. Attorney General to prosecute that. But where a conflict exists, it might require a special prosecutor. This security breach severely compromised the safety of American troops in advance
Black
of
lung
imminent
mine.
U.S. operations and airstrikes against Houthi rebel positions. It is well documented that the Houthi arsenal
It
includes
doesn't matter. Most
anti-aircraft
conspiracy theories are
capability,
real. Like that's
ballistic
not an
missiles,
insult
cruise
anymore.
missiles, rockets, and unmanned aerial attack drones.
Oh, nice. I need some more
Mr. Goldberg,
gasoline.
who
Let's
was
go here.
unwittingly elevated to the clearance level afforded to members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, was also joined in the exposed group chat by Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, and other senior members of President Trump's national
But it
security
doesn't
team.
matter because that's not what this
committee
hearing's
should be
about.
questioning
It's about
every single one of them
the
as to why
freaking
they were using
propaganda
an
machines
unapproved,
known as NPR and
unsecure
PBS.
messaging app to conduct sensitive classified discussions
So I don't even know
about
why this dude's
military
talking about
operations
this.
in which our sons and daughters in uniform are being sent into battle. One of
He
the
hadn't even
participants
mentioned
was actually
NPR
sitting
yet.
in
Like, way to
Russia,
stay on topic.
sitting in
dumbass.
Russia using an unsecure app. And every member of this committee knows what that means. We've all been advised about which
Hadn't
apps
mentioned
are
anything
secure
about
and
what the
insecure
fucking
and
actual
when it is
subject of the
appropriate
hearing is yet.
to engage in non-critical
That's useful
discussions.
for a fucking meeting.
As former chairman of
about a
our
certain
subcommittee on
topic
national security,
is to
I
not even
recall a
fucking
time when
address it.
just the potential for a security breach that could expose American troops and intelligence personnel to unnecessary danger would immediately trigger hearings and bring this committee to a lather on both sides. but you can bet we won't be touching this issue. Because today, the controlling House majority is afraid to do its job. It is afraid to hold Trump and Trump's administration accountable. They would rather post up against Big Bird than deal with that issue.
Well, let's talk about Big
In
Bird.
reference to public media,
That's
Elon
the
Musk
whole
recently
point of the
asked,
meeting,
should your tax
doofus.
dollars really be paying for an organization run by people who think the truth is a distraction? Well, I would say about the same about the current administration and its proliferation
How
of
long is he
disinformation.
gonna go
From
on
claims
for?
that Ukraine started its own invasion, to Secretary Heged's assertion that no one was texting war plans.
Yeah,
You can
2025
read
is
the
going to be
text
rough,
today
man. It's still going to be rough.
because
things aren't going to go down until
yesterday in the hearing they
2026.
said it wasn't classified information. So you can actually go
2025 is
on
still going to be rough.
the New York Times website and read the text that was discussed in advance of our military operations in Yemen. Madam Chair, if shame was still a thing, this hearing would be shameful. And I yield back the balance of my
It's
time.
going to take a while for a lot of that stuff to take effect.
The dark spot facts you need to hear.
We were like
Are you Dr.
really hit
Gundry?
hard
Yes, I
by
am.
Is it true that
COVID
you're
and
almost
stuff.
70 years old?
Actually, I'm almost 70.
COVID like drained a lot of the fucking, we have inflation and all that shit. Like it's just really
I am pleased
bad.
to introduce
Not
our
only
witnesses
that,
today. Paula Kerger
Janet
is the
Yellen-
President and Chief
hold on.
Executive Officer of the Public Broadcasting Service.
Not only that, Janet Yellen, Biden's financial, what was she, the director of the Treasury or whatever? Like there was a lot of debt that Biden like refinanced. They've refinanced creatively as far as like it's going to come due. A lot of it, like they just financed, like it's just like they just put it off for 1 year, like instead of like doing it like over 30 years or doing it over a certain amount of time. A lot of it, like they were like emergency, like short-term loans. So a lot of those are going to be coming due in like 2025, 2026. Like they did some really foul shit in the Treasury. And so a lot of that's going to come due this year. And then, like I said, 2025 is still going to be rough. I think it's not going to get better until 2026 from what I've read.
Also known as PBS. Catherine Marr
Which
is
is
the President and Chief
unfortunate
Executive
for everybody.
Officer of National Public Radio, also known as NPR. Mike Gonzalez is the Angelus T.
No, I agree with you. People on both sides don't have our best intentions at heart. There's a lot of people that need to go, like a lot of old people for sure, like the people that have been there forever. Like back in the day, you were just supposed to go and you were elected by your little area and you're just supposed to go up there and do that for, a little while. And then you were supposed to go back to your farm or your small business or whatever it was that you normally do. So, I definitely agree with that, but I do like the way that they're cutting down government. I do think that that's important. Like, I don't think anybody wants more rules and regulations, which is all government is. The more government, the more rules, regulations, and stuff they put on us. And so, I don't want a lot of, like, the less government for me, the better. I don't need a lot of fucking people, like, as far as like filing taxes, having to pay taxes, it's just like, it's ridiculous. All the shit that you have to do, like, any kind of less regulation or less government for me is good. And since they're actually doing that, I can see them doing that. That makes me really happy. Like a lot of it's going to be going back to the states, and I hope they do get rid of FEMA too. They're talking about getting rid of FEMA now. Because like, how do we put so much money into our school system and we have such shitty outcomes? So like, we'll see what happens. But like I said, less government to me is a good thing. And so I'm pretty happy about anybody that does that. I don't care who it is.
Donato, E Pluribus Unum Senior Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Ed Ullman is the president and CEO of Alaska Public Media. Again, I want to thank you all for being here to testify today. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9G, the witnesses will please stand and raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm
of our troops overseas?
All right, let's.
Today, Americans have more media choices. NPR is only 25% of station programming on average. Audiences for NPR bring the scale and revenue that subsidize essential local programming. Local public media journalism has never been more important to American families who consider it part of the fabric of their communities. It correlates with new platforms. We have a it's
PBS is to support our stations so that
We've got
respectfully share
NPR,
over
we've got PBS.
Multiple arguments. A moral and decent man, unquote. Or consider Catherine Marr's appointment as NPR.
And then some other like
set
media
in
groups or whoever.
Content engagement services and local and
I mean, we basically know what they are and what they do.
To our national partners.
I'm more curious about
We're the head of Wikipedia for many years, which is a platform that doesn't tell the truth. Let's walk through some of your statements so the public can understand your personal views. You said your fellow Americans just elected Donald Trump as president again this past November. You called him a deranged racist and sociopath. You posted on X that America is addicted to white supremacy. It's appalling. You've publicly chastised using the phrase boy and girl, which you said erases the language for non-binary people. There's only two genders, by the way. Ms. Marr, the federal funding that your outlet receives comes from all American taxpayer dollars, not just from your viewers who support such statements as these. Let me inform you, and that your federal funding is also paid for by the other half of the country, the 77 million Americans who voted for President Trump, someone you called a deranged racist sociopath. Ms. Marr, many find your pro-censorship and anti-free speech views more concerning than your politics. The only speech you like seems to be speech that you agree with. In 2021, you called the First Amendment the #1 challenge in American journalism.
There he is.
Because it makes it hard to crack down on bad information. You said in a TED Talk that our reverence for the truth might be a distraction. You've also expressed support for deplatforming individuals you view as fascist. Who do you think should be charged with cracking down on so-called bad information? Is it NPR? Is it the government? Is it you, Ms. Marr?
Hi,
yes,
I'm Brett.
we liberated
And I'm
the
Jonathan.
outpost.
This is Darla, and this is Buddy.
Congresswoman, Madam Chair, thank you so much for the opportunity to address this. I know.
Do you is it up to you and NPR to crack down on bad information or decide the truth? Answer the question, yes or no, Ms. Marr.
Absolutely not. I'm a very strong believer in free speech, and I believe that more speech.
Your public statements say otherwise. Ms. Marr, in 2021, when speaking at an Atlantic Council event, you said that when you were CEO of Wikipedia, you took a very active approach to disinformation and misinformation. During the COVID pandemic and the 2020 election, you said you censored information through conversations with government. Which governments were those, Ms. Marr? The Biden administration, yes or no?
Madam Chair, Wikipedia never censored any information.
These are your public statements, Ms. Marr. Ms. Marr, are you familiar with Section 399B of the Communications Act? It prohibits non-commercial education broadcast stations, NCEs, from airing commercials on behalf of for-profit entities. The FCC recently opened an investigation into the underwriting announcements and related policies of NPR and PBS. Does NPR air commercials for for-profit entities, Ms. Marr? Yes or no?
Madam Chair, we are in full compliance with the FCC's inquiry and will continue to cooperate.
I remind you, you're under oath, and violations of the Communications Act comes with a fine up to $10,000 and possibly up to a year in prison. Does PBS air for-profit commercials, Ms. Kruger?
We air underwriting announcements, and we believe we are in full compliance with the FCC, and we look forward to delivering the material required in this part of this investigation.
We look forward to that too. I'm assuming you're concerned, both of you are concerned about this, and that's why you brought so many attorneys with you today. Ms. Kruger, using taxpayer subsidies, PBS funded independent lens to make documentaries for part of your programming. In 2016, Real Boy was aired about a trans teen navigating adolescent sobriety and the ramification of his gender identity. In 2022, the same series aired Our League, in which a trans woman comes to her old school Ohio bowling league in a story about transition. Then in 2024, A Racist Trees was aired, telling a story of how in Palm Springs, a Black neighborhood fights to remove a divisive wall of trees. Do you think PBS needs to fund ridiculous material such as this?
What kind of shows
are having
is
to pay
that?
for?
That sounds
These are
lame as fuck.
documentary films that are point of view pieces that are part of our primetime schedule for adults.
And parents and adults don't trust that type of programming.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I ask a unanimous consent to enter into the record this letter from 72 public radio stations serving rural communities across the country, where they emphasize how important federal funding is to the ability to provide vital public safety information.
Without objection, so ordered.
Okay. I also have a similar letter from Georgia, from the Georgia PBS NPR station, also asking for consideration for federal funding.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. Ms. Kruger and Ms. Marr, can we talk a little bit about the educational service you provide for children of low-income families, and how that is received, and the trust that you've generated among families in that situation?
Yes, a significant part of our broadcast day is devoted to programming for children. We focus on preschool. Goes back to the legacy of Fred Rogers, who believed that media could be a tool to help to instruct children as well as a tool of entertainment. Our programming is focused on core skills that kids need to develop before they enter school, in math and in learning numbers and in learning letters, so that kids that don't have the opportunity to be in a formal pre-K program have a chance to walk into school for the first time on equal footing with kids that have more opportunity. And that's the heart of what we think about in the programming that we develop for kids.
Now, I know you've done some, independent groups have done assessments on trust, the trust factor that parents have on PBS Kids, which is one of your most popular
get off me, dog.
Services. Can you talk about that?
Yes.
Where did you come in terms
And the
of
animals suck in this game. It takes forever to freaking
in comparison to other stations?
Yeah,
Jeez,
we are the most
what is
trusted
that thing?
media brand. In fact, Parents Magazine
rabid
this
dog?
week just ran the results of a study that was done on Daniel Tiger's neighborhood, actually looking at 16-year-olds.
Oh, get out of the
remember some of the
way!
basic
Look at her.
skills
She
they
just
learned
ran. This
as
is
small
my supposed to be
children.
my thing.
And
She
what
just
we're
ran right
focused
in
on
front
is
of
to make
us.
sure, again, that every child
Oh,
has the
damn.
opportunity
Holy
to learn
crap.
and be excited about the world around them when they enter a school for the first time, and to give them those core basic skills that we
Damn,
can see
come on
they
now.
carry forward in life.
Ms. Marr, I'd like you to focus on
Freaking eating me alive
the
and
work
shit.
that public media is doing in relation to
Jesus.
public safety communications.
What kind of weird looking bear is
How
that?
important is this function of
Asshole
public
bear.
broadcast media, particularly? I'm
Get
talking
out of my
about the
way. I
most
keep
rural,
accidentally shooting you.
most remote communities
Damn.
in this country.
Why does she have to follow me everywhere?
Thank you so much, Congressman. We are part of the National Next Generation
Do I
Warning
have any,
System, for
like,
which we've received a significant
bombs or
investment
anything? What
over
do
the
we
course
have?
of the last few years, and many thanks to Congress for supporting that appropriation. Our stations are busy implementing that across the nation. We also are part of the the statewide emergency plans for more than 20 states. You'll see the importance and value of public radio in particular when we face extreme weather. For example, whether in Ashland, North Carolina recently, Blue Ridge Public Radio was the only news information source available for nearly 2 weeks as people struggled with outages of water and electricity, and certainly outages of cell phones and internet. Recently as well, my colleague from Alaska would be able to speak to Raven Public Media, which had a very similar experience of 2 weeks of outages in which the local media station was, again, the only source of information for that community. When everything else goes down, public radio is there, available to first responders to be able to communicate directly about issues of harm and ensure the public has access to vital, critical information.
Now, I mean, there's a lot of information out there, a lot of stations out there, but we're talking, what's the difference here when you have a paywall-free, non-subscription access for some of these communities?
I think it makes all the difference in the world, sir. We recently, as I mentioned in my opening statement, we're one of the only publications in America that has a dedicated veterans beat and the only one without a paywall. I'm always struck by something that our veterans reporter told me, which is that a mother of one of our troops deployed overseas came to him and said that for the first time in 9 months, she'd heard his son's voice. That's something that I believe only public media can do, and it can only do that because it is available to all Americans without any barriers.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I yield back.
I now recognize Chairman Comer from Kentucky for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Ullman, I'm glad you brought times already at the early start of this hearing about rural and remote. And I have to tell this story. When I graduated from college with a degree in agriculture, I went back to rural Monroe County, Kentucky, and worked on a farm, my farm, for 5 years, full time. Farm to this day. I was going to say, it sounds like old James Comer. I was in a tractor, sometimes 10, 12, 14 hours a day. And I listened to the radio. And the only radio station I could get that had news was public radio. So I listened to as many hours of public radio as anyone on this panel, I can assure you. And it was a great service. That was 30 some years ago. Today, in that same remote area, I mean, you've got Sirius XM, you've got podcasts, there's internet access now. There's a whole menu of media options now. So, but over time, and I still occasionally listen to NPR because I just want to hear what they have to say. And I don't even recognize the station anymore. It's not news. I feel like it's propaganda. I feel like it's a bunch of bullshit. Every time I listen to NPR. It's a bunch of bullshit. And, you know, a media entity like MSNBC or Huffington Post that, in my opinion, consistently spews disinformation, they can do that. They're a private company. But NPR gets federal funds. And you know, I have a problem with that, because if people in Alaska, if all they have is public radio, then all they know is what these headlines say, and they're wrong about COVID-19. And the headlines are in the background. Don't have time to go over all these headlines that are wrong. About Russian collusion, wrong. About the Hunter Biden laptop, wrong. And then there's a story about and part of what we went through on this committee during the Biden investigation, which, by the way, ended with Joe Biden's last act as president of the United States, pardoned his entire family preemptively for an 11-year period, which just so happened to be the 11-year period that this committee investigated the Bidens, that we had subpoenaed bank records. I don't think NPR reported about the pardons, but they reported a lot about how there was no evidence of any wrongdoing and things that just weren't true. In fact, there's a story, NPR, lawmaker leading Hunter Biden House investigation accused of owning a shell company. Well, that's me. Miss Mayor, are you familiar with that story that NPR wrote about me at the height of the Biden investigation, when you all were disputing every aspect of our investigation?
Where's the key to let the other
factual, We have
gotta save the other dog.
Hundreds of pages of evidence, hundreds of pages of bank records, hundreds of pages of emails. Do you remember the story that NPR wrote about me saying I had a shell company?
Congressman, I was not at NPR at the time, and I'm unfamiliar with the story.
Where do you get your sources on something like that? That's a very serious accusation because we're investigating a president and his family who had 28 shell companies. I have an LLC, had 5 properties in it. It's in my financial disclosure form. I've gone into great detail, given lots of interviews, but people that listen to NPR, they're totally disinformed on the truth. And
I have to find what the dog wants.
That because you get federal funds. And I do believe there was a role for public radio 30 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, maybe 5 years ago.
Where's the dog? I lost the dog.
Of technology today, I don't think there's a role for public radio anymore. And I think you've abused the privilege that you had with receiving federal funds. Because these headlines here are not true. This is disinformation on some huge topics. Do you want to dispute anything that I said in the remaining 30 seconds?
Thank you, Congressman. First of all, I want to recognize your concerns. One of the first things that I did in coming in May was
the
to
dog
beef up
wants
our
something in
editorial
this room.
standards.
But how do I get in
directed
this
my
room?
editor-in-chief, who, by the way,
Why is NPR even doing editorial?
I'm so sorry.
Do editorials?
I don't mean editorial in terms of opinion editorial.
Do you even need opinion? What does it matter with the opinion? If you're a federally funded entity that's supposed to provide the news, can you not provide the news?
Of course,
fair and balanced?
Of course, Congressman. I mean editorial standards for our journalism was to beef up our editorial practices, bringing in more editors to make sure that we have more points of view reflected in every story. I've engaged in a number of actions trying to address
and my
some of
time's
these
expired.
concerns.
I've lost confidence in public radio. I don't think, Madam Chair, they should get a penny of federal funds. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I now recognize Mr. Garcia from California for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I want to first begin by thanking all of our witnesses that are here today. I know that there's a lot we should be discussing right now at this hearing. We've, of course, had some pretty shocking security breaches that we're just learning about through a lot of our national security officials. We know that Pete Hegseth should be removed from office or should resign. We have Donald Trump, who, of course, is crashing the stock market. He's taken away millions.
What does this have to do with NPR?
And hurting people
PBS.
across this country to fund tax giveaways to billionaires.
Jeez,
and our
man.
constituents can't access their
Way
Social
to stay on
Security
topic.
benefits. Now, I think actually Chairwoman Green
Okay, what does
supports
the dog want?
everything that the
I don't
Trump
understand.
administration is actually doing. So instead of a serious hearing, we're here to attack NPR and PBS. So let's get right into it. Now, Ms. Kerger, the American people want to know, is Elmo now, or has he ever been, a member of the Communist Party of the United States? A yes or no?
No.
Now, are you sure, Ms. Kerger? Because he's obviously red.
Well, he is a puppet, but no.
Now, that's not all. He also has a very dangerous message about sharing and helping each other. He's indoctrinating our kids that sharing is caring. Now, maybe he's part of a major socialist plot, and maybe that's why the chairwoman is having this hearing today. But let's talk about somebody else. Let's talk about Cookie Monster. Now, we know that Health Secretary RFK Jr. is coming out against fast food and baked goods. Are we silencing pro-cookie voters? Yes or no? Ms. Kerger.
But cookies are a sometime food.
Well, thank you. And now I agree with you. And let's also talk about the most important maybe character on Sesame Street. This is actually Big Bird. Now, Ms. Kerger, since Elon Musk actually fired USDA workers who have been working on the bird flu, does it make sense to also fire Big Bird? Yes or no?
We would like to keep Big Bird.
I completely agree with you. And now it gets even worse. Now, this is actually a tweet that Big Bird actually
Elon Musk
sent
wants
out
to
about the
fire Big
COVID-19
Bird.
vaccine, encouraging folks to actually get their vaccination, which, of course, we believe in vaccines. Now, perhaps the reason why we're having this hearing is because our chairwoman, Ms. Green, has actually said some really negative things about getting vaccinations. And that perhaps is why we are here. And so we support Big Bird being pro-vaccine.
Definitely don't want to get
promoting
any
vaccines across this
mRNA
country.
ones.
Now,
That's
I
for
will
damn
admit, though, the
sure.
extreme liberal agenda that you're all pushing, I think, doesn't stop there. This, of course, is Bert and Ernie. Now, these two guys actually live together. They're friends. They're supportive of each other.
Oh
now,
my
that might be
gosh.
triggering to our chairwoman and someone in this
Oh
committee.
my
Perhaps
God.
that's also why we're
Like,
here today.
like
Ms.
why
Kerger,
do they have
an
to?
important question. Are Bert and Ernie
What?
part of an extreme homosexual agenda?
Why do you have to sexualize them?
Thank you, Ms. Kerger, and thank you for being
Why?
a good
This
sport.
is weird.
Now, I'm obviously using some
Oh
humor
my God.
here, but the fact that we're sitting here today talking about defunding public television is actually not funny. At a time where we can't agree on basic facts, and while the
That's so
free press
weird.
is under attack, we need public media like PBS and NPR more than ever. A large majority of Americans say they trust PBS. And that's
weird.
exactly why extremists are trying to tear it down. Public broadcasting is a tool for education, for emergencies, and a cherished part of our national fabric. We get huge benefits from a tiny federal investment. The majority and our chairwoman should drop this attempt to silence media voices they don't like. So the message, I think, today is very, very simple. If we're going to get rid of any puppeteers, we should get rid of the one that's actually controlling Donald Trump. Fire Elon Musk and save Elmer. And with that, I yield back.
Oh, man.
I now recognize Mr. Cloud from Texas for 5 minutes.
Absolute clownery.
Thank you,
man.
Chairwoman. NPR fancies itself as a nonpartisan news outlet,
How the fuck
public
am I
information
supposed to get
outlet.
over here?
Even says that we should consider all things. All things are considered, yet their history of political bias has shown that there are a number of things they have not considered. They asked us not to consider that the Hunter Biden laptop was real. They dismissed what was always the most probable theory of the
We need to
COVID
get
lab
over
leak
here.
from Wuhan. They
I think I
interviewed
have super jump.
Russia collusion hoaxer Adam Schiff 25 times, who claimed to have a vault of information in his office leading to the impeachment of President Trump, which, of course, we now know was all fraudulent.
All the power, all the reliability, all the innovation. It's all here at Tengar Ford Collins. With our extensive selection of award-winning Ford trucks and our competitive prices, there's no better place to find your next pickup. And thanks to our expert service and
I'd like to submit for the record an article by Uri Berlinger. I've been at NPR for 25 years. Here's how we lost America's trust.
Without objection.
So NPR, unfortunately, has lost much of the audience that they used to have, and now they have a very partisan audience because of this. Who do they bring in to fix it? They bring in Ms. Maher, who has a history of
Right, what is this
commentary
damn
of
dog
promoting
want?
Marxist ideology, including critical theory. Said we should not use the terms boy or girl, has called our president a deranged racist sociopath, and said that our reverence for the truth has become a distraction that is preventing us from finding consensus and getting important things done. And
Oh,
one could
okay.
look at that
Okay,
and think
I
that
can get in this
maybe, in
way.
your view, promoting groupthink is more important than finding the truth. I thought we liked diversity of ideas, especially, and that as an online encyclopedia that you used to manage,
There's the key.
activism was more important than accuracy. Now, I had
Yay,
an
I
uncle
can
who
free all
used
the
to
dogs.
say that you should never let the truth get in the way of a good story. And while that was humorous when we were talking about weekend fishing expeditions, when we're talking about news and information and encyclopedias and things that are of national importance, I find that very troubling. Now you are here managing NPR, which is in part federally funded. Can we expect that you will bring the same lack of reverence for truth to your management of NPR?
I'm freeing the dogs. Yay.
Thank you, Congressman. First of all, I do want to say that
I'm
NPR
freeing the
acknowledges that
dogs.
we were mistaken in failing
I'm
to cover
freeing
the
the
Hunter Biden
cats.
laptop story more aggressively and sooner. Our current editorial leadership.
In Wuhan?
We recognize that we were reporting at the time, but we acknowledge that the new CIA evidence is worthy of coverage and have covered it.
What have you done to clean up
Of the people who
bias
live
before?
there.
You mentioned I wasn't there for that. What are you doing to clean up and make sure that we have?
Did I get all
Absolutely.
the
Thank you,
dogs?
Congressman. As I mentioned, I came in May. Mr. Berliner published his
Oh,
story.
looks
2
like
weeks
Wig
into my
Splitter's got a
tenure
link in the
regarding stories
chat
that had happened prior. I
of
wish
a
that I had
video
had
on
the
his
opportunity
Rumble
to speak with
channel.
Mr. Berliner. I would have
So
loved to have
you
had
guys
him
definitely want to
engage
check
and
that
come
out.
back to us with some suggestions as to what we could do editorially in order to address what he perceived as bias.
Now you've had a long history, including the thing that I mentioned about lack of reverence for truth. And how reverence for truth, you've even talked about the First Amendment kind of getting in the way of what you wanted to get done. and then you're wanting us to believe that NPR is now taking this non-biased approach. I mean, where was the come to Jesus moment for you, I guess, that has turned you around and that we can trust
Where's the
American
dog?
taxpayer dollars with your leadership of NPR?
I so appreciate the opportunity to perhaps clarify some things. My talk about truth was really referencing the way that people use truth to refer to belief as opposed to facts. And my encouragement was that we focus on facts. With regards to the First Amendment,
That's not what your comment said. Your comment said that truth was getting in the way of getting things done, and that you were prioritizing what you wanted to get done over truth. And that's really unfortunate. I want to go to a different context, because you're allowed to have your political opinion. Any news organization should be going after the truth. That's what we want and expect out of news organizations. But certainly a media platform can have whatever opinion it wants in a free society. The question before us today as a committee is whether or not the taxpayers should be forced to pay for this kind of thing. Mr. Gonzalez, I wanted to get your take on this about why the corporate public broadcasting is it still relevant today? I mean, we're in a different context than we were in the 60s, where maybe not every home had a television. Now many of them have multiple televisions, and certainly most have a screen in their pocket most of the time.
This weird dog
I
place.
have 3 here on my desk, and so it seems like we're in a different context of where could we possibly get the news today or information. Could you speak to the importance or lack thereof of the Corporation of Public Broadcasting in the context of where we are today in society?
Yeah, right. When it came on after the passage of the 67 Public Broadcasting Act in the early 70s,
Come on, dogs.
There were only 3 networks.
You're free.
You had Cronkite, Reasoner, and the other guy. And PBS added by a third the number of networks that we had. That's not the case today. And as far as education, which has been diminished, and by the way, I believe that Sesame Street was sold to HBO 10 years ago. But as far as the educational value, we have an unending stream of educational content online. I could reel off a number of websites that people can access, YouTube channels where kids of all
go to the next place.
income levels can access educational content. So but basically, as I said in my testimony, it goes back to the basic unfairness that conservatives for 50 years have been saying, but you're completely biased. And they have the audacity to say, oh, no, we're not. And you have to just pay us. And it's just, that is the basic.
The gentleman's time has expired. Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record an article published today by Yuri Berliner about NPR, basically saying that the bias has not changed.
Our hotel is the best in the world. At the end of the week, you will be an entirely different person. What happens in Thailand stays in Thailand.
Amen. Amen.
Madam Chair, I also have a unanimous consent request from the members who are at Mr. Grijalva's funeral mass this morning, asking to submit into the record this letter of support for federal funding from
Without objection,
WKMS, which is Kentucky Radio, which is where Mr. Comer wrote his
Without objection, so ordered.
tractor. Thank you.
I now recognize the gentleman, Mr. Kassar from Texas, for 5 minutes.
Good morning. Mr. Gonzalez,
you
wrote the proposal to defund NPR, PBS, and public broadcasting for Project 2025. Can you answer a few questions for me? How many millions of dollars a month do taxpayers spend for Daniel Tiger to play golf?
I have no
For
idea.
who? Who's Daniel Tiger?
To your knowledge, has Miss Piggy ever been caught trying to funnel billions of dollars in government contracts to herself and to her companies?
That's a silly question.
Oh my
The answer is
gosh.
no.
How dramatic.
How about Arthur the Aardvark? Has he ever
Come on
fired
now.
independent government watchdogs who are investigating his companies? The answer is no. Madam Chair, I'm told we're here to talk about government efficiency, but Daniel Tiger has not blown $10 million of taxpayer money to play golf with his friends, but Donald Trump has, just at the beginning of his administration. Miss Piggy hasn't been caught funneling billions of dollars in government contracts to herself, but Elon Musk has. And Arthur has not fired independent government watchdogs investigating him and his companies, but Elon Musk has fired at least 5. So once again, my Republican colleagues are dragging in a scapegoat. This time,
They're all
PBS
being
and
drama
NPR,
queens, to be
try to
honest.
distract from the fact that Trump and Musk are robbing working people. It's Sesame Street that's making things expensive. It's Mr. Rogers that's blowing taxpayer money. It's listeners like you. It's absurd. The total funding for public broadcasting is just 1/6 the amount that Elon Musk's companies make off of the government every single year. But you will not see Elon Musk being grilled by this committee. I've seen a lot, but pointing the finger at Elmo to cover for Elon Musk might be a new low for Miss Marjorie Taylor Greene's committee. I don't think Americans are buying it. Here's what I think we should be having a hearing about. After Trump and Musk took over the government, reporters noticed the State Department was trying to funnel $400 million taxpayer dollars to Tesla. The State Department said it's an old contract, no news here. But because of a brave whistleblower and an NPR reporter, they exposed the corruption and the lies. Madam Chairwoman, if we want to look into waste, fraud, and abuse, why not look into that? Elon Musk, who's running cabinet meetings, who's running the White House, was trying to funnel money to himself. So let's stop investigating Cookie Monster and start investigating how the Trump administration lied about this and was trying to funnel money to their biggest political supporter. Maybe you're trying to defund NPR because they expose this kind of corruption. And if Republicans were serious about investigating waste, fraud, and abuse, my colleagues would admit that Big Bird is not the problem. Big tech is, big pharma is, big insurance companies are.
Oh, wait,
Elon Musk's companies make billions, $3 billion a year off of government contracts. That's 6 times the money that goes to all of public broadcasting. Private insurers and Medicare Advantage overcharged taxpayers $83 billion just last year. That could pay for public broadcasting 160 times over. The $4.5 trillion tax cut for the ultra wealthy that Republicans on this committee are trying to push through, that would pay for public broadcasting 9,000 times over. There is money to pay not just for PBS and NPR, but health care for every American, tuition-free trade school and community college for every American, to end homelessness on the streets of our cities. But my Republican colleagues don't want to talk about the corporate waste, fraud, and abuse because those corporations fund the Republicans' campaigns. So instead, they want to shut down educational programming for kids and their families, and they want to shut down local radio stations. To borrow a phrase from Sesame Street, the letter of the day is C, and it stands for corruption. Look, in my home city of Austin, Texas, we have Austin City Limits, which decade after decade after decade has chronicled American music. And if they had a bad season and it was private TV, they just would have shut it down. And we wouldn't have had decade after decade after decade of Austin City Limits. That's the amazing thing about public broadcasting. I have a lot of public housing residents in the San Antonio side of my district. And when I talk to them and they hear about what's going on in Washington, D.C., they talk about Texas Public Radio. And I just heard my colleagues talking about educational programming for kids on YouTube. That stuff is loaded with ads. And also on other forms of private television, they're selling you and your kids stuff, making people feel bad. They're trying to make a profit off of you. That's why I got sat in front of Mr. Rogers, because you got to learn something and they weren't just trying to sell you junk. It's better for our kids. It's better for our families. And we should actually be supporting public broadcasting instead of this stuff. Madam Chair, leave Elmo alone. Bring Elon in for questioning instead.
I now recognize Mr. Timmons from South Carolina for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the witnesses for being here today. I'm going to begin by saying this. We don't want to shut down NPR or PBS, but we have $36 trillion in debt, and we have run a $1.8 trillion annual deficit, and we are scouring.
Got to make some cuts somewhere.
Spending, not just Democrat priorities, but Republican priorities too. We're going to be going through the defense budget. We're going to be making sure that we are spending our taxpayer dollars wisely because we have an existential threat. We have an existential threat. We cannot continue down this path financially. So we do not want to shut you down, but we cannot continue down this path. And so if our debt is part of the reason we're here, I think another part of the reason we're here, reevaluating your role in.
Now, with Lotto.com, any stolen second, any casual mindless scroll, any whatever.
The government's use of taxpayer dollars to partially fund your institutions is because technology has changed everything. We are not living in 1967. And the internet has changed our society. We have such increased social interconnectedness, and there are various options for people to get news and to get disinformation or information, whatever you want to get. So those are the two kind of reasons I want to start with. And that's probably half the problem we're here for. The other half is your perceived bias and your content moderation and the manner in which you are violating journalistic integrity. And I'll say this, NPR, you have been far worse at this. Ms. Kruger, you have done a much better job at this, but we still have some issues we're going to talk about. Ms. Marr, do you think that the public statements you have made on social media create a challenge in your leadership for what should be an unbiased public information system? Do you think that your past comments, I'll give you a better question, did they come up in your job interview? Like, do you see a problem?
Congressman, thank you for the question. No, they never came up in my job interview.
You're a rabid progressive. Like, and do you not think it's a problem that your political leanings make it seem to the American people that you're not biased and you're not doing your job? Because you agree that your job is to have journalistic integrity, right?
Absolutely, but there is a strong firewall between the newsroom and anything that I
Let's
do.
talk about the newsroom. You have 87 registered Democrats, not a single Republican in your editor board. So, I mean, how does that work to give us the perception that you're doing your job of actually delivering unbiased information?
Well, I would agree with you that number is a concern if it is accurate. I do believe that we need to have journalists who represent the full breadth of the American society so that we can report well for all Americans.
I think that you are failing. I realize you've only been there for a year, but I just really think that while it is a small portion of your budget, you very much should expect to restructure your revenue streams, because I don't think that NPR is necessarily worth saving. And I'm going to go on to Ms. Kruger. I will say this, you have been very professional and you have been there for decades. And I think that you've done a fairly good job over your tenure. But I want to ask you a very simple question. In retrospect, do you think that it was inappropriate to put the drag queen on the kids show? Do you think that was a mistake?
The drag queen was actually not on any of our kids' shows. The image that Chairman Taylor Greene showed was from a project that our New York City station did with the New York City Department of Education.
What time of day did it air?
It did not air. It was a digital project they did for
the New York City Department of Education.
It only appeared on our website.
Yeah, the Department of Education can definitely go.
It was not a PBS. It was not for PBS. It was mistakenly put it on our website by our. I'm sorry. I don't mean to talk over you. It was mistakenly put on our website by our New York City station. It was not intended for national distribution. It was immediately pulled down. It was never broadcast.
Do you think that you should publish something that calls trees racist? Is that, in retrospect, should you have published that?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
You had a segment that was called Racist Trees, and it was we've already referenced it a number of times. So, I mean, do you think trees can be racist? I guess that's a good one.
I don't know what you're talking about. I've never heard of what you're referring to.
All right, well,
but I'd be happy to look into it.
I guess, do you think that it's appropriate to expose children to issues of transitioning? Do you see a problem with that? Is that something you should avoid?
That is not anything on any of our children's programs at all.
Ms. Kruger, you have done a far better job here today, and we're going to continue to have this conversation. But again, we have $36 trillion in debt, and we're trying to figure out how to make sure that our kids and our grandkids have an opportunity at the American dream, because if we don't change course financially, they won't. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you.
I now recognize the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Crockett, for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much.
Lord.
It should not be surprising
Lord.
that the president is doing everything possible to make
This
it more
woman
difficult for the
crazy.
media to hold him accountable and for the public to be informed about his reckless and illegal behavior. Yet here we are. The Republicans have actually organized this goofy hearing to try to convince the American people that PBS and NPR are domestic terrorists or domestic threats. My apologies. Not the incompetent, unqualified Secretary of Defense whose texting war planned who's texting war plans to journalists. But it's y'all, PBS and NPR, the American people are supposed to be worried about. You can't make this up. It's as stupid as it sounds. The American people should be worried about the president threatening to investigate NBC for treason for reporting on his felony convictions, or arresting reporters and stripping networks of their licenses for not saying nice things about him or not using Gulf of America. The Republicans' witness, Mr. Gonzalez, went so far as to suggest that because NPR and PBS reported on the murder of George Floyd, they, quote, represent a danger to our physical health as well as to civic health of our body politics. Ms. Mayor, do you think reporting on the murder of George Floyd and highlighting instances of systemic racism is a domestic threat?
IRS e-file is now open. Snap your W-2 and file your taxes 100% free. Plus, get your biggest
to America.
Thank you, Congresswoman. I believe it's our responsibility to report on all issues of interest to the American public.
Thank you so much. Ms. Kerger, what about you?
I agree. I think it's important for us to report on the important news of the day.
So let's talk about the critical role of public media. During his first term, President Trump's own Department of Homeland Security highlighted the importance of public broadcasting's role in public safety. In 2018, his administration stated, quote, PBS and local public television stations play a crucial role in protecting communities by delivering essential information to individuals and first responders. These benefits are all made possible by public broadcasting stations' unique reach, reliability, and role across America, and are especially vital in rural and underserved
I like the map
areas.
better in this.
Madam Chairwoman, I would ask
in
unanimous
5
consent.
and
I seek unanimous consent to enter into
this
the
one.
record the 2018
Without objection, so ordered.
Better than I like it in the
and Madam Chair, I
other
also
Far
seek
Cry,
unanimous
the Far Cry
consent to enter
6,
into the
I
record
believe.
the 2019 report titled Modernizing the Nation's Public Alert and Warning System from Trump's.
Without objection, so ordered.
In the report, FEMA encouraged, quote, the use of public broadcast capabilities to expand alert, warning, and communication capabilities to fill gaps in rural and underserved areas. Mr. Ullman, what's a more significant domestic threat, reporting the murder of George Floyd or dismantling most of America's emergency communication systems?
Oh, damn it.
Can you please repeat the question for me, Congresswoman?
Which one is more of a threat? Reporting the murder of George Floyd or dismantling most of America's emergency communication systems?
Dismantling the emergency.
And isn't it true that in Barrow, Alaska is the only, I'm sorry, and
Yep.
isn't it true that KBRWAM
Come on now.
in Barrow,
Fuck it.
Alaska,
There's like a big
is the
fish.
only
It just-
broadcast service available in an area of more than
What the fuck was
90,000 square
that?
miles?
That is correct. It's also the North Slope, where the
that
majority of
big
all the
fish
oil
thing?
production that comes from Alaska takes place.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And isn't it true that without these stations broadcast, Americans in rural communities would lack
Just
access to
died.
life-saving information and public safety alerts?
That is correct.
So in your opinion, would eliminating funding for stations in rural America like WNGH Channel 18 and the Chairwoman's District
annoying.
hurt Americans?
It would hurt Americans, yes.
In
Right,
fact,
where
Georgia
are we
Public
going?
Broadcasting serves as the official distributor of evacuation route information during state-ordered evacuations, and the chairwoman is here advocating to strip their funding. Look, the DOGE agenda isn't about government efficiency. It's about breeding corruption at the expense of the safety of the American people, particularly Americans living in rural or remote parts of the country. They don't care about
Oh, there's
public
a
safety.
truck.
They don't care about emergency management, and they don't care about free speech, all of which are harming American people. In fact, I'm going to skip off real quick because they have tried to come for you, Ms. Mayor. And I just want to clarify, you did not work for NPR when those statements were made, did you?
That is correct, Madam
And to
Chair.
be clear, free speech is not about whatever it is that y'all want somebody to say. And the idea that you want to shut down everybody that is not Fox News is bullshit. We need to stop playing because that's what y'all are doing in here. You don't want to hear the opinions of anybody else. And the Constitution states Congress shall make no law respecting
Now
or
stop playing.
establishing of religion or
Oh my
prohibiting
gosh,
the free
this idiot
exercise
needs to get
thereof
away.
or
This truck's
abridging
gonna
The
the
blow
gentlewoman's
up.
time has
Stupid ass.
expired. The gentlewoman's time has expired.
Good, get away from it.
Madam Chairwoman, can I put something into the record? Unanimous consent, please.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. I'd like to put under this NPR article what Biden preemptive pardons for family members could mean for presidential powers? If I could submit to the record.
Without objection, so ordered. I now recognize the gentleman from Ohio, Jim Jordan, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Maher, who is Uri Berliner?
Mr. Berliner is a former senior editor.
That's all?
A former senior business editor for NPR.
How long do you work at NPR?
I believe he was there just over 25 years.
25 years? Award-winning journalist? Did he win any awards?
Our time did not
Peabody
overlap.
Award? That's pretty important, isn't it?
That is,
So
absolutely.
pretty distinguished journalist, right?
Certainly.
And he wrote a long story about what you do at NPR. Is NPR biased?
Congressman, I have never seen any instance of political bias determining editorial decisions. No.
Well, Mr. Berliner, in his story last year, wrote, in the D.C. area, editorial positions at NPR, he said he found 87 registered Democrats, 0 Republicans. Is that accurate?
We do not track the numbers or the voter registration, but I find that
Was award-winning journalist who worked 25 years at NPR, Mr. Berliner, was he lying when he wrote that?
I am not presuming such. I just we don't track that information about our journalists.
87 to 0, and you're not biased.
I think that is concerning if those numbers are accurate.
It's concerning. I mean, it wasn't 44-43. It wasn't 60-27. It wasn't 70-17. It wasn't even 80-7. It was 87 Democrats, 0 Republicans, and you say NPR is not biased. How about the big stories over the last few years? According to Mr. Berliner, again, he wrote on the Trump-Russia story, he wrote, at NPR, we hitched our wagon to Trump's most visible antagonist, Representative Adam Schiff. He said they interviewed him 25 times. Is that accurate?
I was not there at the time, but those numbers sound accurate. Yes.
Those sound accurate. But then he said when the Mueller report came out and Robert Mueller said he found no evidence of collusion, he said Russiagate faded from our programming. Is that accurate?
Again, I was not there at the time. I couldn't say.
92% of people who have tingling or numbness in hands or feet are missing the warning signs of decaying nerves. An urgent message to anyone who suffers with tingling and numbness in their feet and hands. This discovery.
You couldn't say?
I was not at NPR at the time.
You didn't prepare for that? You knew we were going to ask you about this guy, didn't you? It's come up like 6,000 times already in the hearing.
I just couldn't say whether it faded from our coverage, sir.
How about this story? October 2020, the New York Post had the Hunter Biden laptop story. And one of those editors, I guess one of those 87 Democrat editors, said this: we don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories. We don't want to waste the listeners' and readers' times on stories that are just pure distractions. Was that a pure distraction story?
Our current editorial leadership believes that that was a mistake, as do I.
Yeah, the whole country knows that was a mistake.
Actually,
definitely
that was
impacted the
a
election.
freaking
I
thing,
think it
wasn't
certainly
it?
impacted the election. How about the COVID origin story? That's a pretty big story too, right? Mr. Berliner said, we became fervent members of the team Natural Origin, even declaring that the lab leak was debunked by scientists. Turns out, though, the lab leak is what most people think actually caused the COVID virus.
Sorry, is there a question there?
There is. You guys were 0 for 3 on the three of the biggest stories in the last 5 years. You guys were 0 for 3, and yet you maintain that NPR is not biased?
Congressman, I do not believe we are politically biased. No, we are a nonpartisan organization.
Nonpartisan organization. What's happening to your listeners over the last 5 years? Went up, down, or stayed the same?
It has gone up and down and is now going back up.
Well, I thought 5 years ago it was at 60 million. And you said in your opening statement, I think 43 million.
That's correct.
So 43 million now, and it was at 60 million 5 years ago. I can do some math. That looks like it went down.
And is now going back up.
It's now going back up?
Yes, it is.
How much has it went back up?
It's gone up a couple of millions over the past year.
So you went from 60 million to 41 million. Now you're back up to 43 million.
In a year's time, I'm very proud of that growth, sir.
Okay, you're proud of that.
Boo, bitches.
But over 5 years, it's went down 18 million.
That is correct, sir.
Okay. Should taxpayers subsidize NPR?
I believe that taxpayers subsidize local stations, sir. That is the vast majority of what.
I thought you said you got 11 million from Corporation of Public Broadcasting, which is taxpayer funded directly to you, right?
That is to support the public.
And then local stations get it from the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, right? They get taxpayer
100
money.
million that goes to the local.
100 million goes to local stations, and then those local stations buy back programming and content from you. So that money goes to local stations, comes back to you. gets routed through the local stations. It's all taxpayer money.
Those fees are actually based on private donations rather than on federal funding.
Well, we all know money's fungible, so some of it gets put in there.
Certainly, we could agree that money is fungible.
What? More money for less listeners. You fired the guy who pointed all this out, who said that you were so biased to the left that you lost listeners, which is exactly happening, and you're here maintaining that, you need to continue to get taxpayer money.
I did not fire Mr. Berliner, sir.
Okay, the guy that left after all that. Understand. Are you fundraising off today's hearing?
Sir, I believe that there was a message that went out earlier today letting people know we were coming in. Yes.
Yeah, and at the bottom of the message it said, donate now, right?
I don't recall the exact language.
I can show it to you. Right there it is. Donate now. I mean, I'm not against fundraising. We all do it.
I feel like I'm getting allergies.
But
Like my eyes are
I
itchy.
assume this fundraising is probably going to all the left listeners who are
I think I need to take, like, an
subsidizing
allergy
content
pill or
by the
something.
taxpayers, and that's
The
the
gentleman's time is
That's
expired.
the rub. I yield back.
I now
I yield
recognize
back.
Miss Randall from Washington for 5 minutes.
Yay! This is our
Thank
outpost
you
now.
so much. You know, I'm new to Congress. This is my first term, and I came from
Where do we park our car?
a legislative body that
Where
didn't
do we
have quite
park our
as heated
car?
debates in our committees, and we're generally fairly welcoming to our folks joining us to testify. So I want to say thank you to all of you for taking the time out of your schedule to come
Where are we
and
going?
share your experience with all of us and with the American people. I'm grateful for your time and for the work that you do in service of your communities and neighbors. You know, American families used to get all the same news, right? Folks would have access to a handful of news channels. They would watch the same nightly news programs. They would go from one
Because people would
to the
just
other
like
to the other, and we could all
because the news used to
agree
be like what
on
happened. It
what
didn't
was
used to be
happening
everybody's
in our
fucking
country.
opinion.
We all used to operate from the same baseline of information,
So
but
annoying.
today it is no secret that we are operating in a much more diversified and fractured media environment. The content space, the use of AI-generated content, Americans
news should
now
just
have
be
to be able to
news.
discern for themselves whether something they are hearing is true or not. But investing
Like there was
in
a
public
fire
media
here. This
is a bedrock
happened.
to our healthy,
Blah blah blah.
critically informed, and engaged public and our democracy. And I know that my colleagues on
Gosh,
the
my
other side of the
allergies are
aisle have
killing me.
argued over whether every piece of programming is in service of the public. But I also want to point out that, you know, in my fairly rural district, we have a lot of areas that aren't served by broadband.
Hi, I'm Adam, and I made an appointment with Lifeline Screening to get my arteries examined for plaque buildup, so I can understand my risk for stroke and cardiovascular disease. Yeah,
Oh Lord.
I'm a smart guy.
You know, a lot of folks who cannot easily access numerous podcasts while they are out working on their property. They, you know, have to maybe wait for something to download when they're at home using maybe even a wired internet connection.
What
right?
are you talking about, lady?
I'm in a
You
dead
don't- what
zone
is she
for
talking
an hour and a
about?
half
Rural
'cause I'm driving
America.
from one city to
Come on
another
now.
in my community.
Don't exaggerate.
But
Come on now.
public radio is broadly accessible. And it's
Come on
important
now.
for, you know, folks counting on the weather report, for kids who are, you know, in pre-kindergarten, who
Wired
are watching
internet? Like, come
Elmo
on now.
and learning to count and do math. It's important for the young people
Where the hell
who,
are you from?
you know, were home during COVID and were able to continue learning with the help of public broadcasting. I think we have a lot of problems in this country, a lot of problems that we should be tackling for regular Americans who are struggling to afford to
When?
live, to afford housing, to afford healthcare, to be able to live the lives that they dream of for themselves and their children. I think we've got some national security concerns that have been talked about a lot in this committee. But I think talking about defunding
They definitely have been brought
public
up.
broadcasting and public media is an egregious misuse of our time here.
Uh-oh. Oh my God, this is a really big
Mr.
buffalo.
Ullman,
holy crap, it's gonna.
When we talk about cutting funds for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, we're talking about those local small stations that rely on that money. 70% of Corporation for Public Broadcasting funding goes directly to public radio. I know you've worked in Tacoma in the past.
Yeah.
You can
These
attest to
animals
how
are crazy in this
rural
game.
some parts of Western Washington are. It's not all Tacoma. What role do public media stations like NPR and PBS play in supporting
I need to
local
calm down.
stations? What kind of programming do they provide?
The local communities are at the heart of the work we do. As I shared in my opening remarks, we talk about the people and the places there. You bring up a memory of mine. Chehalis, Aberdeen, Hoquiam area, KBTC was the only public television station there. You know about the struggles that community was having over a decade ago, job loss, all kinds of terrible economic situations. We provided educational services there with a $500,000 local grant that we partnered with the community on. It was incredible work. We do the same thing in Alaska with military families, homeschoolers, elementary schools. Those are the
You're
pieces we
welcome.
provide. And then
I just saved your
local
life,
news
sir.
stories that people can use about where they live and what they do. That's what we do. That would be lost.
Trucks.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Oh Lord, there's another buffalo
Thank
thing.
you. I now recognize the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Burchett, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Ms. Carter, is it true that
Oh,
HBO
man.
bought the rights to Sesame Street?
No, it did not. It developed Sesame Street entered an arrangement with HBO for a number of years,
And it
which
was
is
a
now
paid arrangement, correct?
yes, which allowed us to get the series for free.
Oh my
During the
gosh.
period of that time.
How much money was transacted during?
I don't know.
Oh,
Sesame
man.
Street is a private organization. It is separate from ours.
Oh damn, got a
Ms. Meyer,
civilian.
What about Lee Greenwood's "God Bless the
I
USA"?
still don't know how to blow up these things right here.
I'm sorry, sir. Could you repeat the question?
What about Lee Greenwood's "God Bless the USA" is propaganda?
I don't believe that is propaganda, sir.
Okay, well, in January, North County Public Radio, and that's a subsidiary of NPR, had Daphne Brooks, who apparently is a black feminism scholar, on its show, where it was hosted by the host Brittany Lewis, and it says, "Have you ever watched something on TV and thought, okay, now this is propaganda? Have you ever had that moment?" To which Daphne Brooks replied, "Whenever I see Lee Greenwood singing Proud to Be an American."
I believe that represents the individual we interviewed on air, not the position.
And
of
did you
NPR.
say there's no bias on NPR?
That is not a
And
position
that
of
is not a
NPR.
biased statement, ma'am. That is not even both parties wrap themselves around this song every time there's a national conflict. Lee Greenwood sings it, and he does a beautiful job. But you say there is no bias in NPR.
And he does
That
a
is that
beautiful
individual's
job.
opinion, and she, of course, is entitled to it. But that is not the position of NPR.
There's a lot of people like Puffy in the music business. Exposing Puffy means exposing them.
Ma'am, you said in your opening statement that
Diddy Kong.
you were going to be transformative, and I believe you failed to do that. Let me ask you, why did you call President Trump a fascist and a deranged racist sociopath in 2020?
Congressman, I appreciate the opportunity to address this. I regret those tweets. I would not tweet them again today. They represented a time where I was reflecting on something that I believe that the president had said rather than who he is. I don't presume that anyone is a racist.
Which you don't believe anyone is a racist?
I don't start by presuming anyone is a racist, sir.
Okay. Has NPR or PBS ever conducted an internal review to assess whether conservative or right-leaning perspectives are fairly representative news and programming?
Congressman, what we look at is the distribution of people who listen to our work. And we can tell you, and I'm proud to tell you, that for our digital, our podcasts and our website, the distribution of Americans who come to NPR does reflect the political distribution of the nation. In fact, the distribution on our websites, 33% of folks who come are conservative versus 28% who are liberal, and the rest identify as independent. So the largest group is conservatives who come to NPR's websites.
So you believe that most Americans think President Trump is a fascist and a deranged racist sociopath?
I don't believe that at all, sir.
Okay. Ma'am?
We obviously are constantly looking at the voices that we bring forward. We take to heart our commitment to bringing forward perspectives from across the country. Our programming comes from our local stations. And I mentioned in my opening comment the series that we did out of Arkansas, Southern Storytellers. That's just one little example. 10% of our schedule is news. The rest of it is either children's programming or programming based on history to give us all a collective expression. And we're constantly looking to making sure that we're bringing forward a diversity of viewpoints and perspectives and experiences that really do make up the fabric of this country.
Okay. NPR senior editor Early Leonard, it's been mentioned before, but he said he was quoted as saying an open-minded spirit no longer exists within NPR, and now, predictably, we don't have an audience that reflects America. Yet you stated that
I thought I drove
the
my
audience
truck
does
in here.
reflect America. He was suspended without pay for 5 days for saying this, and of course, he eventually resigned in April 2024. You've also stated that federal funding is essential for NPR to operate, but also claim only 1% of your funding comes from the federal government. Which is it?
Mr. Berliner was suspended for the outside work policy, not for what he said, sir. In terms of federal funding, the federal funds go to support our operation of the public radio satellite system, which enables all of our local stations to be able to communicate information and broadcast, including...
What's up, Zai? Funding is very fungible.
Not much. What are you up to, Rumor?
I don't buy
Not
that
too
argument.
much.
I
Did you finally...
wonder if any of the members...
Hold on. Did you finally get some sleep?
Yeah.
Good.
No, I literally, as soon as I got off with you guys, I passed the fuck out.
Good. I'm glad you got some rest.
I had weird dreams, though. I gotta tell you. And
what were they about?
This is basically my dream log now. But I was at some big banquet soiree, like charity event for the rich hoity-toity people of the world.
Yeah.
And someone comes up to me and was like, hey, check this out. Here's a book. And so I'm flipping through the book, and I can't really see anything. I just know it's a scandalous book. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, I don't think I should have this. And I give it back to them. And all of a sudden, someone takes a picture. Next thing I know, people are like, you got to get out of here. You got to get out of here.
Okay, I'm in.
This guy comes, takes me. I get in his car, and we're like, okay, where are we going? What's the first step? And I'm like, apparently, I need to run. I have to run from everyone trying to kill me now because someone's got this picture of me holding this book.
Yeah.
So I'm in the truck. I'm like ducking under the seat, kind of in the front passenger seat, trying to hide from the cops because sirens are everywhere. It's like GTA. And then he's like, okay, what do we do? I'm like, well, we need to go to New York because I got to get the fuck out of Jersey. And so he's like, okay, what's the first step? I'm like, I got to color my hair. I can't have pink hair. They're going to find me. And then I woke up right as we're like, okay, we got to get hair color. And then I woke up.
That's funny.
But it's just like, what the fuck did I watch to cause that?
That's a crazy dream, Zai.
So, yeah.
I'm going to put my glasses on. I feel like I have allergies or something.
It is that time of year.
Exactly. So annoying. Yeah, I finally started the next Far Cry.
Far Cry. What was that news thing you were watching?
That was like a hearing. It was not as good as I was wanting it to be. Sometimes they're usually a lot better. But this one was pretty gay.
Yeah, I kept tuning out because I'm like, okay, fuck this. No offense.
Yeah.
But
No,
I'd
it
rather
was.
play Far Cry than listen to that.
Yeah, no, it was not as good as I was expecting, but some of them are pretty good.
I tuned in at the part where they're like, "Is Bert and Ernie gay?" And she's like, "No." And I'm like, "Of course
Fucking
not. They're puppets. They can't have sex. What are you talking about?"
Yeah, exactly. Like they're not meant to like be. It's not even meant to be anything.
Like I don't even think they have dicks. Like they're not anatomically correct puppets. What are you talking about?
Exactly, they're puppets.
Now Molly, on the other hand, John's sex doll. That's another story.
Exactly.
Hi, John.
Oh, there's a supply truck.
Shit! Stay alert.
Get in, you weirdo.
Punch it.
Gotta get her in the sidecar. Damn it, it's too late, because it took forever for you to get in the damn sidecar, bitch.
You're my accomplice now, bitch.
She takes forever.
Not dying. Not yet.
She like has gone everywhere with me in the game so far. I wish she'd go away. Because every time I try to get in a car and hurry up and go, I have to wait for her to get in the car, and she's like, all taking her time and shit.
Yeah.
Taking her precious ass time.
And she's telling you to punch it like it's your fault.
Exactly. Like, hurry up. I'm like, what? I know you didn't. This one's pretty good. Gosh, my allergies are killing me.
Lucky star.
My eyes feel freaking itchy AF. Do you get bad allergies, Zai?
No, my brother gets them real bad.
Well, they suck. Oh, this is one of those scavenger dudes. They're supposed to have a lot of stuff in their backpacks. Heck yeah. Alright, get back on the bike, bitch.
I'm good. Let's go.
Oh, man. I'm gonna have to take something.
Why does my gallery keep closing? Is it because I added them to my computer?
Yeah.
Thought that was it for me.
I downloaded them. These are messages. Wanna There we go. God damn it, can't. Sorry. I have to do it from my messages.
Nice.
Every time I'm in one of these, I'm just waiting for something to snap off.
All right, we can liberate this outpost now. Nice. Let's go turn off the alarms first.
No, I can't do it from there. I have to do it from Valerie. Why won't it let me? Try the new one.
Did it just say eat my entire ass? Dang, this game's crazy. I need a
Well, I've been
key.
restarting my phone, and right now hubby's trying to call me. I bet you anything.
Dang, that sucks. I need a key.
I gotta move.
What? Where's the key?
Did it just do it again? Why can't I make that photo my wallpaper? This is bullshit, rumor.
That sucks,
I just want my mom took this great photo of hubby on St. Patrick's Day. All I
Yeah.
want to do is make it my background, but the app keeps closing when I try to open the image.
Oh no.
It's opened, set as wallpaper. There we go.
Viva Libertard!
Now I gotta move these.
Sorry about that whole train thing. So the highwaymen usually clear out a place and move on. But they've been stuck at that
Well,
church
well,
for
well.
days now. That usually means they're trying to get at some valuables. Thought you'd like to know.
That was too close.
Bean's gonna be so happy to hear we got wood. Ah, yikes.
Wait, I can end this.
All right. Liberated this place already. We can go to the next one.
I love small sawdust.
I guess. I need to find a car. Let's see where the next one is. Oh, there's old Nick Rye. All right, where are we? We're there. There's definitely something up there. So maybe we'll go check that out since it's on the way to the general direction that we're going anyway. Oh man. Definitely have to take some allergy meds here. Ugh. see what's going on over her.
Moving to a better spot.
Well. What have we here? This is a chill little area.
I'm heading that way. Got you now!
Can't stay here.
Gotta loot everybody. Alright, well, that was exciting. Where else? I don't want to do a treasure hunt. Let's see what this is. This looks interesting. Looks like some kind of factory or something. I don't know.
Alright, I think I need to get a new gallery app.
Maybe so. That sucks if it's like messing with your phone.
It seems like all my apps are becoming like void or like obsolete, I think is the word.
Yeah.
Because my messenger app says, oh, you're going to have to get a new messenger app. But if you want all your messages to switch over, just get the Google one. So I'm like, I didn't want the Google one. That's why I got this one. But if
Yeah.
this one's not going to work, fuck it. But so I got the Google one, but it just sucks.
That's so annoying.
Because like there's certain things that certain like, you know, habits that you do like swiping and button clicks that you're used to.
Mm-hmm.
Like I swipe on someone's name to the right and it should call them on my old messenger. Now it archives it. It's like, who the fuck needs to archive anything? You can
Yeah.
call them that way.
That's
Like,
annoying.
I click on it and click the call button. It's like I just want to swipe real quick and be able to call them from my texts. And the font's different.
That's annoying, Zai.
I miss my Alias, the little flip phone.
Yeah, there's a couple. I miss my BlackBerry. I used to love that phone.
I can't stay here. Moving. Turn off the music. Heading on down.
Rumor's so fancy, she had a BlackBerry. Business lady.
It used to be great for like emails and stuff.
Ah, shit, my computer. Or not my computer, my TV. I can't hear anything.
Dude, they're blowing up my friend over here.
Help me.
If there's
Jeez.
loud sounds, my TV just shuts off randomly and resets.
Oh yeah, no problem. Clearing out this outpost.
What happened to your rocket launcher?
Oh, I'm playing a different. This is a Far Cry New Dawn.
Oh, alright.
So this is like it's the same map as Far Cry 5, but it's a completely different game. I finally finished Far Cry 5.
Alright.
And so this one is like Far Cry 5.5, if anything. All right, I'm obviously missing somebody. Oh, there you are. Woohoo! Viva Libertard! Another outpost liberated. Already gotten like 5 today or something.
Nice.
Yeah.
This place sure as hell isn't up to code.
We're killing it. It looks like a mushroom.
Eric's telling everyone he's on a path of vengeance. I don't know what he
Yay, there's the call I've been waiting for.
good in a fight. I saw him chasing a group of highwaymen near a cave down that way. You should go introduce yourself.
Why don't we go introduce your mom? All right. Man, I really feel terrible. I need to take some allergy meds. I'm gonna get some allergy meds. Oh, man. It definitely does not feel good. Hate allergies. Hate allergy season. Dang it, I hate these the medicine things you have to open with the little tabs. It's so annoying. I'm terrible at this. Fold and pull. It sounds a lot more simple than it is. Let's see if I can just use a pair of scissors. Because that's so annoying. All right. There we go. 800 years later. I'll take half of this. Yikes. Okay. Yeah, that does not feel good.
The strongholds in our hands.
All right. So now we've liberated this outpost. What do we have next?
Hell yeah, Sharky here. I got a kiddo to look after now, so I did the responsible thing and I took over a stronghold full of explosives. No.
All right, so that's where we're going.
Yeah. Didn't take
It's
long
not
to
super far away, but on the road again. Hopefully this takes care of my allergies on the road again. Okay, what is this?
I can tell you thought about this. I'm getting strange reports that Sharky Boshaw is running around with a baby. That can't be good. Please go see what's up. He was last seen heading for the sulfur ponds.
Glad you saved your neck in the crash.
All right.
I can't wait to give the highwaymen a big fuck you into that message to go across the country.
All right, we gotta find someone named Sharky. Sharky.
Highwaymen are stressful.
Oh look, lots of components and stuff. That'll be useful.
Where is that tubby bastard?
That will be useful. Okay, okay.
This is no good. I can't just leave the kiddo. Why'd that dummy leave before I was back?
Ooh, there's some more stuff I need to gather.
This used to be a geothermal park before the bombs fell. From hot springs to sulfur pools. What a contrast.
Sweet. All right. Well, my allergies are killing me, so I'm gonna go ahead and end this.
Did you want to talk privately backstage?
Sure.
All right.
All right.